We are in 1945, which, first of all, I think you can agree is a pretty uneventful year of human history. Except in Georgia, the state, not the country, where William Pickard was born, the future biggest acid drug dealer of all time. Well, to start, unfortunately, he had a really sad childhood, being born wealthy in a stable and happy family in the suburbs of Atlanta. Skipping other parts of his childhood, blah 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 blah, Pickard, being a brilliant student and a good athlete, remember that, managed to get accepted at the University of Princeton, which is a really surprising fact had he not dropped out after 1 year. After stealing a car and driving as far as possible. He actually drove so far that he arrived in this magical place called the Mental Hospital after being arrested. A place where he eventually got diagnosed as a narcissist. After getting out, Pickard then moved to the West Coast. There, he was introduced to their famous drug scene. During that time, he even went as far as Mexico to learn the ins and outs of drug trading. His first arrest for manufacturing LSD came on December 28, 1988, in Mountain View, California. The lab was contained inside a trailer that had been moved into a warehouse. It contained state-of-the-art equipment. He was producing at least like a lot of LSD and making them into gel, tablets and blotter paper. After a neighbor reported smelling a weird chemical smell coming from the warehouse, feds arrived to find 200,000 doses of LSD and Pickard inside with shit in his pants. He was arrested and served 5 years in prison, a place where he eventually became an active Buddhist. By 1994, Pickard had enrolled at Harvard. Here he focused on the drug abuse in the Soviet Union, where he theorized that the booming black market and many unemployed chemists could lead to a flood of the drug market. During that time, Pickard was still manufacturing LSD. Pickard's LSD lab was located in a lot of different locations that he changed every 2 years as to not draw attention to himself. In early 1996, the lab was located in Oregon. Later that year, it was then moved to Colorado. Then, the lab was moved to New Mexico. Pickard liked this location because his overhead costs were lower and the fact that there was almost no humidity, which can affect the production of LSD. One of Pickard's main customers was a man named Petaluma Al, because he was from Petaluma in Tartarus, otherwise known as California. Pickard would send the LSD to be transported to Denver or Boulder and then for it to be mailed or picked up so that the Spatula guy would never know where the lab was located. So now why is this Petunia guy so important? Actually, most of his customers were overseas in Europe, which meant that in addition to dealing LSD in the United States, Pickard was also now dealing internationally. In February 1998, Pickard, being at a gathering of various LSD dealers and chemists in the home of Jerry and Caroline Garcia from the band Mountain Girl, eventually met Gordon Todd Skinner. He became involved with Pickard, and alongside someone called Clyde Apperson, they started making drugs together. Quick side note on Skinner: even though even less is known about him, we do know that he's an autodidact chemist. Also a violent sociopath conman that beats women. He allegedly performed his first mescaline extraction at the age of 19, using himself and his friends as guinea pigs to test the poop water tier product that he created. He basically sold anything and everything he could find to get people high. Naturally, by 25, he was arrested and facing life in a New Jersey prison for trafficking 42 pounds of marijuana. So, in order to beat the charges, he began a long and fruitful career as a snitch. After that, in 1996, he purchased a decommissioned nuclear missile silo in Kansas. Yeah, I don't know how the fuck he did this. And actually transformed it into a giant LSD lab. Side note over. Okay, so after meeting each other, Pickard and Skinner decided to work together, with Apperson helping with taking out and reassembling the lab. Skinner knew the market and Pickard the chemistry. The lab at the missile silo was equipped with a variety of unique features designed to avoid detection. Quickly after, they began producing unbelievable amounts of LSD and began making big money. The lab was located deep underground and was accessed through a hidden entrance. It was equipped with an air filtration system to control the releases of fumes, and also a ventilation system to regulate the temperature and the humidity levels. The main missile bay was filled with luxury items, like fine Persian carpets or even luxurious leather couches. Just to show examples of how well equipped that place was, it had a $120,000 stereo system and even a bathroom equipped with a bathtub that could be used by at least a half a dozen people. Quickly after, Skinner purchased a second silo to house an LSD lab, even though they never used to cook in it. Well, you might be asking, how did they manage to legally build that? Well, their story was that they were eccentric investment bankers. And Skinner said that he had been stockpiling food and machine guns to prepare for Y2K. Skinner had everything you would need to survive the apocalypse in the silo. They even explained the fact that they carried briefcases stacked with foreign currency and $1,000 bills because they thought the US financial system was on the verge of collapse. They threw around money, drove Porsches, wore Armani suits. But, like always, problems began to come, especially because of Skinner. Allegedly, one day, he overdosed one of his employees who was working in the silo. Growing more and more paranoid and being afraid that the LSD lab was under government surveillance, he decided to contact the DEA. By August 2000, he wanted to turn Pickard and Apperson in to avoid any criminal charges he might face. He began recording conversation and compiling evidence. He even gave agents guided tours of the lab, and eventually received full immunity. On election day 2000, Pickard and Apperson found the lab not in the main silo, but in the secondary silo. Remember, that's the place where they never used to cook before. Uncertain as to why it was moved there, they decided to move it back to the main silo. The lab was placed into the back of a pickup truck that Apperson was driving, while Pickard was following right behind it. On their way to the second silo, they were pulled over by Kansas Highway Patrol. Pickard could feel that something was wrong, so he did the next logical thing and ran off into the woods like a crazy person. Remember him being a good athlete? Well, later in his life he was also a marathon runner. He therefore ran off for hours in the woods and eventually found a barn to hide in. But the DEA found him the next day, still in the barn. That fucking Pickard was now on trial. And guess who appeared as a key witness? Skinner. And what about the guy he OD'd here? Well, the DEA falsely testified on his behalf so that Skinner was free to lie on stand against Pickard. Skinner also told the jury that Pickard had apparently masterminded everything. He had perfected the LSD process and Skinner only supplied the venue and manpower to build the inventory. Pickard received 2 life sentences without parole, while Apperson received 30 years. After the trial, Skinner and his girlfriend Crystal Cole, yes, a drug dealer's girlfriend called Crystal, traveled across America, still dealing whatever they could to survive and mainly selling MDMA in a new lab that Skinner was using. But as Skinner grew more and more violent and paranoid, his girlfriend left him. Skinner, being the wonderful human that he is, wanted her back, but after she declined, he dragged her back into his car, strangled her, and threatened to drive off a bridge. Being scared for her life, she tried to get a restraining order against him. After some time, she began dating a new guy called Brad.
Hello.
But Skinner wouldn't leave her alone. Seeing that the restraining order wasn't working, and that he now was even more angry, she decided to go directly to the DEA with her boyfriend. She told them about the lab, his abuse, his threats. More than enough for a case. But the DEA didn't do anything. Even worse, conveniently, 2 days later, Skinner kidnapped Crystal and her new boyfriend. After kidnapping the both of them, he drugged Brad and interrogated him. And, again, this actually happened, kicked him in the penis to know what they exactly told the DEA. After getting the information that he wanted, he left Brad to die by the roadside near Galveston, Texas. Brad survived and had to go to the hospital to recuperate from the damage done to his penis. More seriously, unfortunately, he didn't let go of Crystal. He kidnapped her for an entire month, drugged her, and repeatedly took advantage of her. Eventually, Skinner was finally convicted and sentenced to 60 years in an Oklahoma prison, where he is expected to remain until at least 2040. And what about Pickard during this time? Well, he was still in jail, meeting people, like Black Panther H. Rap Brown, the mobster Whitney Bulger, and the sex-abusing Mormon president Warren Jeffs.
Okay.
He even befriended people like the Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht and witnessed 2 murders while he was there. Normal prison stuff. And yes, you heard right, while he was there, because in July of 2020, Pickard was released from prison on compassionate grounds, with the court citing his advanced age and medical conditions in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And yes, Apperson was also released. Finally, we are in 2025, a pretty uneventful year of human history so far. We are in New Mexico, where this guy, William Leonard Pickard, a guy that loves nature and walking, works cases for the local indigenous community. Good night, everyone.